Hey friends!
Hello, you. Fuck, I don't know why I'm doing this. I barely watch Game of Thrones. Welcome to my channel. It's just going to be a lot of bullshit. Just bullshit all over. Bullshit to bullshit and responding to bullshit. But that's what you do when you don't have any skills you can sell to people. You talk bullshit about bullshit that other people talk. That's what we do here. And as my first victim for the bullshit talk, I found this random chick on YouTube who complains about there being more reds than blacks, more redheads than black people in Game of Thrones. Yeah, I'm not sure what to call it, but I had some fun. I had some fun watching it, and now I'm going to have some fun replying to it. So let's do this, mate.
I feel like it's a particularly millennial thing to move back in with your parents after college, but
I think that's a pretty general thing in the US. That's not just millennials.
also maybe we wouldn't have to if baby boomers didn't fuck up the economy and make things really hard.
Well, true. The baby boomers did fuck a lot of things up in the world. But that's not a thing only the millennials should be concerned about. Because everyone else is afflicted by it as well.
Or, college kids who are just trying to get an education without procuring massive amounts of debt. But that's just a whole other discussion that I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about.
I don't know why she decided to use that, but it's funny, so I'm going to use it. Okay, I'm pretty sure that millennials aren't the only ones going in step. I am pretty sure about that. Especially since the US government has, what is it, 20 trillions in debt now? That is insane. And you can go look it up yourself. I don't care. And after this she goes on to talk about her Patreon and how she can improve her channel and blah blah blah, something irrelevant towards the video, so I just skip that. I really don't care. I'm not gonna spend money on her anyway, and I'm not even expecting to earn money on my channel or anything I do, so it's really irrelevant to me. Anyway, yeah, let's move on.
Alright, so on to the actually semi-substantial part of this video. I wanted to talk about Game of Thrones. I don't know if I've ever talked about Game of Thrones on this channel, which is weird because I minored in communications and I used to study English Lit.
Yep, I'm just gonna use this now. This is perfect. 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 And nope, no, I'm not surprised at all. Why would you, why would it be weird for you to not talk about something just because you majored in something else? That makes no sense. Absolutely no sense.
So, talking about media and analyzing it critically is kind of my jam.
If you're not doing it, it's your jam. But what would it be if you were doing it then? Just asking. I don't understand that. No, I'm not sure.
I know I'm gonna get a lot of YouTube trolls telling me that it doesn't matter, it's just a show, blah 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 blah, but...
Well, you do realize that it is just a show, right? Like, blah 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 blah, blah 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 blah, and that's why. Because, blah.
I think it would be foolish to think that the media that we consume, especially media as popular as Game of Thrones, where a large segment of the population is internalizing it and consuming it, I think it would be foolish to say that it doesn't affect us in some way. Popular media not only reflects current social values, but it also perpetuates them. Not only does it mirror society's norms and values, but it confirms them. It repeats them back to us, and it validates the things that we already believe to be true.
Yep. Yeah. Game of Thrones, yeah. It pretty much reflects society's moral values. I can see that. Yep. Yep. You know, it's a series about the Middle Ages or something along the line of the Middle Ages. They have dragons. They have magic. You know, it's not a world about actual humanity. You do know that, right? You do see the difference, right?
But what I realized the other day is that there are more major characters in Game of Thrones that have red hair than there are black or Asian characters.
Well, no fucking shit, girl. It's, it's a fucking series about a world resembling our own Middle Ages. And as you'd know if you spend a little more time studying history rather than analyzing TV shows about fantasy, you'd probably know that there weren't many blacks or Asians in Europe at that time. You'd know that. But you don't, because you spend time analyzing a fucking TV show.
And in case you were wondering, the population of black and Asian people in the entire world is much, much, much larger than the population of redheads. I think redheads are only like 2% of the population, so very insignificant, yet somehow they dominate a lot of Game of Thrones.
You do realize that you do realize that your statistics mean nothing, right? Absolutely fucking nothing. You're using statistics from today to prove a point on something from the Middle Ages. What are you trying to prove with that? Seriously.
But I've also seen it in a lot of other like fiction. Harry Potter, the Weasleys are an entire family of redheads, which I think is just genetically impossible.
Come on, you're taking a fantasy world filled with magic. There's magic everywhere, and the non-magicians, whatever the fuck they're called, they don't see it. And you want to talk about genetics? Because oh, you can't have a complete family of redhead because genetic, but magic is fine. It's completely genetical. It's fine. Fucking dumb bitch.
And I don't really give a fuck about the accuracy of redhead representation. I'm more concerned about the lack of representation of people of color in fantasy just in general.
Redheads don't have cocks big enough. We need blacks to fill out the holes.
And that's not to say that there are zero people of color in fantasy or there's no people of color writing fantasy.
So who is the people, the brown people in Game of Thrones again? There's an entire nation of brown people with brown people ruling it. One of the guys died fighting a big guy in a duel. I'm not sure what you call them. Apparently they're not colored, because I don't know, color? What the fuck? What are you talking about, you dumb fuck? And don't forget that dragon rider empress thingy. Didn't she save an entire nation of brown slaves? Fucking dumbass.
So when I did post on social media yesterday about Game of Thrones having more major characters with red hair than there were black people on the entire show, definitely pissed off some nerd boys.
Well, I didn't exactly see your social media comments, or do I know which nerd boys you're talking about, but I'm just assuming you take something like my response here and think you pissed me off, which you didn't, because I really don't care. I just wanted to respond with something stupid. But I'm pretty sure that it's something like that's going on. I'm pretty sure.
Gotta love those nerdy fanboys who feel the need to be gatekeepers against any sort of critique of the things they love, which I never understood because I think that the things I love are more interesting when you're able to critically analyze them. If something is great, then it deserves to be, critiqued in a way that points out the pros and the cons.
I completely agree. You should be able to critique anything you want. But you should also be able to take the backlash. Because sometimes you say stupid shit, and people will comment on it. Because that's how the internet works.
One of the main arguments I received is that Westeros, which is the main region in Game of Thrones that is explored, but it does occasionally diverge from that is based on medieval Europe.
So all the movies about ancient Japan, right? They have a lot of Japanese actors in them. And some other Asian actors. But they don't really have any white actors. Do you know why? Because there were no fucking white people back then. For fuck's sake.
If you're someone who's taking a Watsonian perspective, then you're only thinking about your argument in terms of the fictional universe that was created. It's basically looking at things from the reality of the fictional work and only being able to explain things based on that reality. There's no outside author or cultural influence because you're only really gonna be thinking of things as if you were someone existing in that universe.
Yes, that is exactly how I watch a movie actually. That's how I read a book, that's how I play a game, that's how I do anything that has nothing to do with reality. Because I don't want reality when I'm doing those things. Is that so hard to understand? Why are you even watching these things if you don't want to experience them? What the fuck? Stupid fuck.
Joyalism is the perspective that I personally tend to fall into because I used to major in, English literature, and that's what all of our papers and all of our study was looking at why an author did a certain thing and how they might have been influenced by the culture they were living in and how that affects the narrative.
So you can't enjoy a movie because your teacher told you to do some irrelevant shit and now you don't want anyone else to enjoy movies either? What are you? Are you stupid? What the fuck?
So someone from a Doyleist perspective would be making commentary outside of the universe and thinking of the fictional work as a creative object rather than something that just is. So when I talk about representation of Game of Thrones, but just in general, I'm not talking about, well, it only focuses on Europe and that's why there were no black people. I'm thinking of the motivations and the reasons and the potential biases that the author or the show creators might have had that would make them want to only focus on Europe and to only highlight white characters.
Wait, I know this one.
Everything is sexist, everything is racist, everything is homophobic, and you have to point it all out.
Fuck. Did I at least get it right? Please?
It's like when you read a history book in high school and you think, oh, well, we're only learning about Europe and America, so that's where all of the important historical events happened.
Why do you keep using your shitty education to make a point about the series being done wrong? Because it's a shitty education and you can't use it for anything but shit, so good luck with that.
When you're in high school, you have to take world history, and I remember that there was a whole chapter dedicated to World War II, which, not saying that World War II isn't important, but then there was only one chapter dedicated to the whole history of Asia. So I think if you've only been taught history that is incredibly American or Eurocentric,
shit, you're gonna get your mind blown the day you realize that your history books are full of shit anyway. Holy fuck. If the lack of material on the history of Asia is what you're worried about, then holy fuck. Your world is going to go upside down one day. Or you're gonna die not knowing, who cares? What the fuck?
Then you're not gonna realize all of the history that exists outside of that.
You do know that you, yourself, don't represent everyone, right? Because you don't know how to use your brain doesn't mean everybody else don't. You do realize that? No, oh right, you don't know how to use your brain. Sorry.
And I do wonder if the Eurocentrism in a lot of historical books affected George R. R. Martin's decision to only focus on Europe.
Why would that take up space in your head? Why?
He could have just maybe focused a little bit on, people of color. Maybe just a tad.
You could also just go earn yourself a ton of fucking money and pay for your own fucking show. Maybe just a tad.
I feel like people will bend over backwards to defend problematic parts of series just because they love them.
I don't really care what you feel. That it's completely irrelevant, you know. And I feel like you're just bending over backwards to find some nitpicking shit that is irrelevant to talk about. But that's just me.
My question for you guys is, how do you feel about the representation of Game of Thrones if you watch Game of Thrones? If you don't watch Game of Thrones, I don't know why you're watching this video, but my apologies. Also, do you consider yourself more of a Watsonian or a Doyleist? Because I find that shit really interesting.
Fuck. I watched Game of Thrones for the dragons. The humans are dying everywhere, so who the fuck cares about them? Well, this was me responding a bit of bullshit to some other bullshit, and if you actually listen to the whole thing, you should really get a life. Yeah, that's it. Have fun.